Essential start to this. The movie that will follow my presentation, which is short, will be about Agenda 21 for Dummies. I didn't find that it was necessary to call it for dummies, but it's a very simple film about Agenda 21. So what is Agenda 21? It's designed to control people, to dominate people, to create a new world order and a centralized global government. That's it, very simple. There are a few factors that you need to know about it and how it operates and why it operates. So it will change everything we believe and know to be true for each and every one of us, for our families, and for our government and our nation. It's a 40-chapter manual designed to create, to control and dominate the world, not just the United States of America. The question is, who's doing this? Well, our U.S. government is doing this. The state and local governments are doing this. Politicians and bureaucrats are doing this. There's no provision for anyone to opt out. You are automatically included. You have no choice. Interesting. President George Bush Sr. said, "This is the sacred principles enshrined in the UN Charter to which the American people will henceforth pledge their allegiance concerning Agenda 21. That's scary for a president to say something like that. He also said that, or shortly after he said that, he signed an executive order which established the Presidential Council on Sustainable Development. That's code for Agenda 21. Way back then, these things had already been considered. And so now we're wondering what's next. How soon will it be complete? What will happen to us? I'll cover some of that. Who knows about Agenda 21? Your local city council knows. Your county board of supervisors know. The governor knows. The state legislature knows. All of the bureaucrats who are assigned to implement Agenda 21 in their clandestine ways know about Agenda 21. So why didn't anybody tell you? Well, we'll find out today. This is the core principle of Agenda 21. So sustainable development is the core principle. So what is the definition of sustainable development? Sustainable development primarily is actually the opposite of what an educated person might think it is. Ultimately, sustainable development will ensure an unsustainable collapse of our way of life. It's that serious. It goes right down to the end. It will eliminate, because it will eliminate private property, so you won't be able to live on the home that you own or the property that you own. How will it do that? It will eliminate paved roads. How will you get to and from your property? And what will happen when your property is no longer usable or just simply taken away from you? What happens to you? What happens to your family? It will eliminate fossil fuels. So you can give up driving your car. It would be really nice. You can drive the train, take the train wherever you want to go. Only the train doesn't go all the places you want to go. And those places won't be there anymore anyway. It eliminates irrigation, so you won't be able to grow vegetables in your yard if you want. It eliminates commercial agriculture. How are we going to feed 300 million people with no commercial agriculture? It eliminates pastures and grazing livestock, so there will be no cattle no sheep, no other animals that graze on the land. It eliminates agricultural chemicals. Now, some of us don't like certain agricultural chemicals, and I don't blame you, because I don't either. But there are some that are essential to grow enough crops to feed the people in our country. And we grow agricultural crops for people in other countries too. We export to the rest of the world. That won't happen anymore. Ultimate objectives are end national sovereignty. You might have the shadow of a government and think, well, I'm going to vote for my representative, and the representative will go to Washington, D.C., and they'll make decisions for me because I trust them. But they won't be making any decisions that you want to make, because somebody else will be making the important decisions. Not your elected representative anymore. It'll abolish private property. It'll restructure the family unit. Your children will be taken away from you, and they will be re-educated someplace else. There'll be an ever-increasing restriction of individual mobility and opportunity. You won't be able to do the things that you want to do. You won't have the mobility to do the things you want to do. It just won't happen. If you survive, you will live in a 210 square foot apartment until the day you die. The depopulation is another objective of Agenda 21. So what does that mean? I think it's self-explanatory. People will die for a variety of different reasons under this plan. Finally, do you believe that you might have some control over the objectives of sustainable or unsustainable development or collapse of our way of life? You won't. You'll have no control. Zero. Okay, so now for the movie.
Sustainable development has become the popularized expression for Agenda 21. Agenda 21 is the 1992 United Nations Rio Declaration on the Environment and Development.
It is the agenda for the 21st century you're living in today. For a brave new world where everything that you cherished and held true will no longer exist.
Agenda 21 defines itself as the comprehensive plan of action to be taken globally, nationally, and locally by organizations of the United Nations systems.
It also elevates nature above man. And it contains something called the precautionary principle, where basically you're guilty until you're proven innocent.
Sustainable development is the philosophy designed to bring human beings across the globe under the full control of a narrow human elite.
It's a 40-chapter document to basically control the world. It's based entirely on socialist control mechanisms.
Sustainable developers have designed a global movement coordinated through a global to local action plan to create world government in accordance with certain objectives. These objectives include an end to national sovereignty, the abolition of private property, the restructure of the family unit, and increasing limitations and restrictions on mobility and individual opportunity.
The green goal includes the listings of what's not sustainable. A couple of the examples include private property.
728 lists fossil fuels.
Golf courses and ski lodges are not.
Consumerism.
Irrigation is not sustainable.
Paved roads.
Commercial agriculture.
Herbicides, pesticides. Elsewhere, it lists farmlands, pastures, grazing of livestock.
And the family unit. The focus of sustainable development is the abolition of private property, societal undermining of the family, and abandonment of the constitutional protection of unalienable rights as described in the Declaration of Independence. You see, I sat on the Santa Cruz Agenda 21 committees.
Now, this was a lot of crazy ideas. This was back in the mid-90s. Crazy ideas I heard. Mother Earth's surface wasn't to be scratched. Human beings were to be concentrated into human settlement zones. Educational systems were to focus on the environment as the central organizing principle. All aspects of life were covered. Well, I went to these committees at the request of some people who told me that I needed to understand what was going on, and I came back and I said, this is craziness. This is so silly. It has no chance of having any effect on our society. Well, I was wrong. The United States government's support for Sustainable Development, Agenda 21, is very clear. In 1992, while the Rio Conference was going on, George Bush, then president, was there, where he executed the Agenda 21 protocols on behalf of the United States and brought it back to Washington, D.C. Within a year, Bill Clinton, by executive order, no congressional review, established the President's Council for Sustainable Development. In Santa Cruz, we've got a 2-lane freeway system. We need 4. But what we're getting is hundreds of millions of dollars of federal money to take a dilapidated rail line that Southern Pacific wants to put in the hands of somebody else so that a commuter line can be built along the railroad track. That'll be followed by 14-story buildings where people will live and stack them and pack them units, where developers or so-called sustainable developers will build these high-rises with federal dollars. In fact, Santa Cruz has received a $300 million federal grant to build the first 3,000 of these stack them and pack them units. The County Board of Supervisors has said, if you are a sustainable developer, you're immune from any construction defect liability. It's a partnership between selected developers building this new world order and the government using the American taxpayer dollars in order to do it. This is a map of the Wildlands Project. To explain the map, the red are areas that are to be off limits to human beings. No resource development, no human activity. If you live there, you won't. The yellow areas are the areas for major control of all human activity. If you live there, you won't. The black areas, the black dots, are the smart growth zones. That's where human beings are to be stacked and packed in small living units along rail tracks. The Smart Growth Program ultimately has jobs assigned and children cared for by the state.
The question has been asked many times how the people who are perpetrating these things expect to do this and make it last. And the answer to that is that you steal a generation of children and you indoctrinate them so that they accept these ideas and they become global citizens in the coming global village.
UNESCO came out and declared 2005 to 2015 the decade of education for sustainable development. But they go on to say that it will encompass the 40 chapters of Agenda 21. That is your federal national curriculum. The entire purpose of second grade social studies is to transfer loyalty from the family to the government and teach them about sustainable economic consumption. Students construct their own understandings of reality and realize that objective reality is not knowable. So why bother? The truth is, the truth, which keep men free, is being suppressed in order to prop up the attitude training agenda. And it moves on. This is our new math called connected mathematics. Standard 3 tells us that students learn that mathematics is man-made, that it is arbitrary, and good solutions are arrived at by consensus. Most of us assume 2 plus 2 is always going to equal 4. You're wrong. We might reach a new consensus. How well does it work? Well, they tell you. In the teacher's guide in the back, it tells us that because the curriculum doesn't emphasize arithmetic computations done by hand, some students may not do as well on tests assessing computational skills. We believe such a trade-off in the favor of CMP is very much to the student's advantage in the world of work. Our children are mathematically illiterate on purpose. How do I know on purpose? Why isn't this just a basic bad idea? Because the Sustainable Development Plan tells us so. Generally, more highly educated people who have higher incomes consume more resources than poorly educated people who tend to have lower incomes. In this case, more education increases the threat to sustainability. Charlotte Iserby, I owe you an apology. I did not believe for the longest time it was a deliberate dumbing down. I thought the dumbing down was a natural consequence of a bad idea. Folks, it's deliberate. It's deliberate.
The sustainable globalist goal is the orchestration of a planned fall of American principles, values, and lifestyles. The effect on the average American will be devastating. With modernizing technology, the ordinary person will live without independence, privacy, or substantive rights.
Another press conference that I attended was the ICLE group, the International Committee for Local Environmental Initiatives, that helps in the implementation of Agenda 21 in all of our local communities. And one of the speakers was a Harvey Reuven, who happens to be the vice chair of ICLE. And I asked him about the correlative rights that Americans derive from the United States Constitution and the Bill of Rights. And that, of course, is your individual liberties, your private property, your freedom of speech. I asked about it clashing with Agenda 21. And you know what his response was? Individual rights must take a back seat to the collective.
Okay. It's all the same subject, Carolyn. Yeah. Really, this is the background.
All right, I'd like to introduce our next speaker, Deborah Henke. She has worked as a nurse and recently retired from the Visiting Nurses Association. She bought property in Bonnie Doon in 1975, and 10 years later, a winery moved in next door, and this was the beginning of understanding the planning department. She is a volunteer, self-made private investigator with a nose for the truth. Let's give a warm welcome to Deborah Henke.
Thank you for that. And in the middle of all of it, I had to get my knee replaced. It's a little slow moving. Wow. And I kind of anticipated the kind of information we were going to just see, because when I first started my first community meeting, I had the information on the Project 21, and I read it, and I pondered that for several weeks and decided, where are we going to start? We're going to start in our own neighborhood, and we're going to start in our own land. And I really, do I have to be single? Okay. This part that I threw together is not that important. What is important is that, again, we come together in different groups, and what has made a difference in the Coastal Commission is people that come with several different groups. So I really support you supporting the Freedom Forum, and we created this Alliance of Concerned Citizens just because we needed a name. Realized that we were all tackling similar issues, met with Becky Steinbruner and some others from Aptos, and realized your problems were similar to our problems. Well, guess what? They're now all of our problems. We're seeing the sustainable Santa Cruz that spent $300,000 or $400,000 on the project coming into fruition with code modernization. Let's see what I want to do here. Okay. Does that look like a home occupation to you? Well, I got involved not because, my situation is already destroyed. This is across the street from me, minus a little parcel in between us. Next door to me I have a winery. On the other side of me I have a vacation rental. That is not why I moved to the mountains. That's not what I've experienced not living to be. I have been blessed to have an enormous amount of wildlife on my property, and the fire even increased the amount of bobcats that we have. So the government, what got me interested in this is two people that I admire in this county. One of them is Bill Parkin, who is an attorney for land use. The other is Gary Henke, who was an active supervisor when the winery first started having a collision of attitudes. So what is happening now is a whole shift over the last 23 years as I look at 92 to present. They are planning in 232 pages of just what was introduced in May to commercialize our neighborhoods, to allow fundraising, to allow event centers, to allow weddings, to allow all manner of things. We raised so much ruckus in Bonnie Doon with the previous slide and the noise that we experienced and the way noise travels, that they decided, oh, well, we won't have weddings in the coastal zone. So all of you who are not in the coastal zone, which includes Live Oak and the cities, and most of Bonnie Doon aren't allowed to have weddings. That doesn't mean you can't have permits, you can't have a winery next door. There is no property size needed for wineries, but many years ago, you did have to have it. The Planning Commission decided, gee, we should never allow a winery where they're not growing grapes. Little did they know that it is really an industrial manufacturing plant. So what we're also losing here is the power to have an input in our neighborhoods. They have created a situation where, oh, it sounds so good because we want to make it easy for you to get permits. It's still going to cost you $46,000 to $80,000 to build a house or an ADU, which happened to my neighbors up the street, from $80,000 to build a little accessory dwelling unit for a mother-in-law, just for the fees. But somehow they're going to allow something to happen so we have more of these ADUs. They're going to take more power in making decisions about what you'll be notified on. In the old days, if the winery was going in, you got to know about it. Now you have to have 20,000 gallons or more to even get notified. So if somebody could just put their winery on their property and away you go. Public hearings only at the very top levels where you might have to have 50,000 gallons. This is just an example. I went through this whole page. It took me 2 months for the August 12th meeting that I held where I met a lot of people in Maryland. Anyway, we have lost environmental impact reports. This is again part of what I'm seeing in the bigger picture is it's confusing to me right now. Do we really want to protect our environment? Are we really going to allow these things? Currently in process is a change of our residential zoning. They're adding new zoning categories which will change our general plan. Recently the housing element just went through, and I'm actually grateful for some parts of it, even though they were incorporating the sustainable of building your stacked apartments along corridors of heavily traveled. Because in it they did not change the current definition of residential. There's no mention of fundraising events and having all of these wonderful things. So I'm hopeful as we go forward that we'll be able to put a little pressure on them. I don't want to take up a whole lot of time because Becky's really important and we have lost some, but there are a couple points that I want to touch on, and that is the support of Bruce Bratton. Well, this is just a picture of events. This is a 2-lane rural residential road that is much like Valencia Drive, the beginning of going into Bonnie Doon, and safety issue. I mean, no one's really looking at what works in our neighborhoods. Obviously, 6-inch stilettos don't work too well in the mountains. I just couldn't back up on that one. The other thing that I want to talk about just briefly is the National Monument. And I have 10 reasons why it's not a good idea. There's a whole lot more reasons. We're going to lose our animal habitat. Now, this is what environmentalists are saying. Do we want 150 to 250,000 more cars on our roads? and that can go exponentially. Yes, it's true with human presence, you have loss of animal habitat, but I've also noticed that the animals get adjusted to residential areas that are open. So we're not losing a whole lot of them, I'm aware of. The deer are numerous on my property now. The mountain lions love to go right behind me and my neighbor. Anyway, we do not have enough fire and police. We do not have the resources. Davenport's a small town. It's going to be a nightmare. We're already seeing a string of RVs lined against Highway 1. It just kind of blows my mind, and that's going to happen. I talked to someone who had traveled and said, if we get the National Monument, we're going to have RVs all over the place. Let me back up one. Well, you already know the gridlock, especially if you're driving from Aptos or you try to go anywhere south at night or north in the morning. The main thing is it's already protected, so why do they want to take it? Well, a lot of people on the North Coast realized that several years ago, Fred Keeley's group, the Semper Byron's Fund, put out a map of the Great Park, and they wanted a park all the way from Wilder clear up into the San Mateo County. And they're already in San Mateo setting aside funds to buy private property. So it actually threatens a lot of people that are on the North Coast, and again, taking away our rights. Do we want that? My experience with the county is, one, they don't care. We on the Castle House and commercial weddings, we went to the zoning commissioner, we appealed to the planning commission, we appealed to the board of supervisors, we appealed to the coastal commission, we lost. Every single one of them. The coastal commission, the planning department was there. We didn't know we needed a lot of groups. If we'd had representation from several groups, it would have been fabulous. So what did we do? We were down to suing the county. On February 4th, we won.
Bravo!
There's still so much work to be done. The home occupation does not allow commercial residences. Currently in the home occupation, it says noise stops at the property boundary. And this was meant to have people who were tax consultants or, yoga masseuses or whatever. It wasn't meant to have huge commercial events on your property. And we want to keep our zoning that way. The county doesn't care. So that's the basis. What can we do to get, what can you do is be involved, be aware of what's happening. We need to attend these community meetings and spread the word, because at some point, I think the only way to stop this is similar to Measure J, only in current time. Measure J actually got rid of the board of supervisors, several of them, actually they were good ones, but Gary Clinton got to stay. But it did stop the development, the big push for development. I think we can do it if we stick together. And please sign up for notifications if you would, so that we can at least, I don't send out very many. It's just lets you know where there's going to be a meeting or what's coming up at the Board of Supervisors that's important. So thank you for your time.
I'd like to introduce our next speaker. Becky Steinbruner is a 30-year resident of the mountains of Aptos and has been involved in her mountain community for many years. Recently, she has been attending meetings on the Aptos Village project, where she felt that questions were not being answered and the people were told there was nothing they could do about it. The plan was a done deal. Not one to take no for an answer, she has relentlessly investigated how this plan came about. She stood, dauntless and invincible, in front of the bulldozers destroying the world-famous Aptos post office bike jumps. They are gone now, unfortunately. They are looking for a new site, though. I now give you Becky for her to tell her story. Please give her a warm welcome. Can you hear me all right?
Yeah.
All right, thank you very much. Thank you to the Freedom Forum for inviting me to speak. And I want to thank Bruce Tanner for making this wonderful slide presentation. It's going to make it a lot easier for you. And I want to take a moment to, this is hard, to thank my daughter Bria, who's sitting in the back. She has made some beautiful handmade cards to support the cause. She was there with me the morning the bulldozer destroyed the jumps. And she's been with me to more public meetings and activist things than probably any kid her age. And I just want to thank her for her support. So, my name is Becky Steinbruner. I've lived in the mountains in Aptos for 31 years. A lot of people say, who are you and where have you been? Well, I was in the mountains and I was really active in my little mountain community on Redwood Drive. Sort of seen as the unofficial mayor up there, and there were a lot of issues. You know, it's a private water company, a privately maintained road, fire issues. I was a volunteer fireman, and I was local in the community too. I knew Rob Lee Levy, the county supervisor in the 2nd District. I worked with her a lot on issues, and I always felt like county government was the most citizen-accessible level of government there was, and was responsive to the people. And then I had a family and had just got busy in life, but I still went to community meetings that were held in the 2000s around the Aptos Village Plan. I found it very interesting, and I was very disgusted by what I saw. The county government, the planning department, Mr. Deming was telling us all that this is what's going to happen. It was very obvious to me and all the people around me that it was a done deal. And we didn't like what we were seeing, and we were asking questions, and we were raising our concerns. The same concerns that people are raising today. But they were all swept away. Our questions weren't answered, and it just seemed like a done deal. So the County Board of Supervisors did approve in, as you can see, February 23rd, 2010, the Aptos Village Plan, which did involve some general plan changes, and laid the groundwork for what they wanted and what Barry Swenson, builder, wanted in the Aptos Village. I'm going to see if I can, I'm really horrible with techno stuff, so please forgive me. So, what got me awake was when I read at midnight, February 15th, this Sentinel article, saved it, Last Chance to Soar. I live on Redwood Drive. It comes down by these world-famous bike jumps, and I watched it develop over the years, and I saw the joy it brought for kids and adults and the community, and it was a great thing because they were out there being active, they weren't getting into trouble, they weren't on drugs, and they were doing amazing things. And this spot, to give Barry Swenson, builder, Jesse Nickel, the vice president, I'll give him credit, they helped build it. And my thanks go to them. But nobody ever imagined that it would become what it was. It was known around the world. It should have been saved. I could not stand by and do nothing, so I decided to try and save it. And I had basically 24 hours. I got a bunch of green signs and put them all around Aptos saying, protest the bike jumps. I sent out emails to everybody I could think of to come help support me on the morning it was supposed to be bulldozed, and I made some petitions
and set them around the day with all the kids, the day before the bulldozer was due to come. Those kids gathered 150 signatures wanting to save the bike jumps. So, what I didn't know is that the day that the kids were sending around the petition, the County Parks Commissioner, Kate Minot, appointed by Zach Friend, was also there circulating a lie. She was circulating a lie as Parks Commissioner that the county had another site all lined up, the Par 3 property over by the freeway, over where you see those big tall poles if you're coming down Highway 1, right before State Park. She spread the lie, and she told me this personally, and she was very proud of it, that she told them all that this was all set up and they didn't need to resist the bulldozer because there was this other place set up. So the next morning, the day of the bulldozer, which ironically is a year ago today, I went with Brea and two neighbors showed up, and one lady showed up from the street, and we tried to save the bike jumps, but we were not successful, and I'll tell you why. I didn't have information that I have now. There were no public meetings to keep people actively involved in the project and what was going on and what the county had agreed to, because it was not required. Once it got approved by the Board of Supervisors in 2010, there was no requirement to have any more public meetings. There were a lot of design changes, there were a lot of agreements made that the public was not privy to unless you knew about their meetings, unless you had time to really research. The other thing that happened is I didn't eat breakfast. Always eat breakfast before you go stand in front of a bulldozer. My brain shuts down when my blood sugar gets low, but I also had stomach problems, so that's why I didn't eat breakfast. But what happened was a real shocker. We had been standing out on the street corner trying to get more people to come in, and Jason Hoffman from the Santa Cruz Sentinel showed up, and he said, "Oh, Jesse's gonna love this." And I said, "Who's Jesse?" "He's the guy that built the jumps." Well, here it goes. I didn't know, I didn't have the information. I didn't know that Jesse Nickel was the vice president of Barry Swinson Builder. I just heard that he was the guy that built the jumps. And so when I went in front of the bulldozer, the other mistake I made is that I didn't take the other 3 people with me. I'd never done anything like that before. I've never done any kind of research and public activism like this before. So there I was in front of the bulldozer, really scared, but determined I was gonna save them. And up walks Jesse and his buddy Aaron, who lives right there. And they said, "What are you doing here? Don't you know we've got this other place set up? Par 3, we've got it. And what you're doing here is going to destroy that agreement with that property owner." And I said, "Well," and my head started spinning because my thought went, "This is Jesse, this is the bicycle people. Why are they trying to talk me out of this? This isn't making sense." And I said, "Well, why can't you just leave them until you get the other place set up?" And at that point, Jesse Nickel went ballistic and started yelling and using language that I don't repeat. And I'm very sensitive to that. And it shut my brain down more. So I really became numb. And then Aaron, it almost became like a mind control thing. They'd shut off the bulldozer and he became very soft-spoken, and now you really need to leave, and the kids all want you to leave, and you know, we're all in agreement with this, we all knew it was gonna go, we've got this other deal, and they convinced me to walk away. And I can't tell you how many times I have regretted that action. Because of what I know now, if I would have known then, I would have been able to stand up and fight. But I didn't have the information. I didn't know who the players were. I didn't find out that Jesse Nickel was Vice President of Barry Swenson Builder until the next day when I read this article in the Sentinel. And by the way, I got blamed in a letter to the editor that the Sentinel printed that I was responsible for the vandalism. It wasn't me. It wasn't me. They knew who it was. They had, little cameras, and they knew who it was, and the kid got, prosecuted. But anyway, what I want to say is that it actually has led me on a journey that has really enriched my life. It's made me crazy in a way, but I have met people that I never would have met before that are amazing people. And I have learned how to research, and I have learned a lot about how this county really works. And I have learned that the county representatives, the Board of Supervisors, they're not the responsive, caring people that I was used to working with in the 80s when I first moved here. As Debbie said, they really don't care. And they are not here to help you find out anything. But I've learned how to file public records request acts, and what you get out of those are gems. So I want to move on. As Gail said, we are trying to find another place, and I think we've got something kind of in mind based on what might happen at this site in the future. Had I have known that an active recreation site was required of the developer to be provided for the community, I would have known that I should have fought for this to be the active recreation site, not what I'm going to show you a little later in the slideshow. So I knew then I didn't have the information. And so I went to one of the little signs that was posted at the site, and I diligently copied down the information. Oh, they're getting ready to change the design. There's some big things that we might be able to have some say in. So I copied this down. This is what was posted at the site the day that the bike jumps were put up. It was actually posted the week before the bike jumps were bulldozed. But because they were posted in such hard to get to areas, you had to stop, park, walk around, and read the tiny little print. I hadn't done it yet, but I did that day. And I thought, okay, I'm going to go see what this is all about. Also, I'll tell you that the day the bike jumps were bulldozed, the first thing I did with Bria, we were devastated. I went to the Board of Supervisors meeting. It was Tuesday. It was a Board of Supervisor meeting. Well, there wasn't a Board of Supervisor meeting, but I did talk with Patrick Mulhern, the analyst for Zach Friend, and told him how upset I was and how upset these kids were and how we really needed to do something to help reestablish the bike jump as soon as possible. And he just smiled and he said, I disagree. I disagree. This is going to be a great thing for the community. And I said, well, would you please relay my concern to Supervisor Friend? He said, yeah, sure. So I didn't think it was going to go very far. And so that's when I started showing up to county supervisor meetings. The thing that I also got to tell you, I went to Barry Swenson Builder's office and met with the project manager, Mary Gourlay, and I didn't get a good feeling about that either, that they really cared about the community. But the amazing thing was once I went to the county planning department where this stuff was all supposed to be, the design changes were there for the general public to view during comment period. This is all I saw. Photographs of the signs at the construction site. There were no plans. There were no specifications giving the information about the design changes. And I thought, this can't be right. I've never done this before. This must be wrong. So I contacted the planner, Randall Adams, and said, I don't get it. There's nothing in that folder. Just pictures of the signs. He said, oh, well, I'll send him a memo and let him know the file is incomplete. So I wasn't able to get back to see what was there until the day before the end of comment period. And what I saw was that the material had been submitted the day before. on a Friday afternoon, when the planning department is closed to the general public. So I read through it, and there were a lot of things that concerned me, like moving the location of the new Soquel Creek Water District well on the corner of Cathedral Drive and Trout Gulch, where I thought there could be some visibility problems there with the little building or whatever. There were no designs there of what it was going to be. The other thing, the big thing, was moving the connector street, and maybe I'll sit to the next, so this makes a little more sense. Oh gosh, there we go. So the design changes involved, there we go. Here's the post office. This is Trout Gulch Road. This is Soquel Drive. And this is the Bayview Hotel. Those are the big landmarks in Aptos Village. So the design changes, this was back in February, March, involved moving the Soquel Creek Water District well over here from the middle of the development at the request of the developer. And it also involved moving this road, let's see where, this is Trout Gulch, and over here is Aptos Creek Road going into Nicene Mark State Park. So there's going to be a new street. This is called Aptos Village Way. And this street, this is going to be called Parade Avenue, I think, that connects that to Soquel Drive. So, Parade Street. This is Parade Street, Aptos Village Way. So in the designs, initially approved by the Board of Supervisors, this street was going to go straight through. And they did that without even having the approval of the owner of the Bayview Hotel taking her property in the back. They just assumed all along she was going to be cooperative, and that's a long story. They were trying to convince her just to give them her property, and she refused. So, that was part of the other problem in last year, is that in 2011, the Aptos Times published an article saying that the Bayview Hotel is holding up the Aptos Village project, and she won't give them her land. Shame on her, and well, they never interviewed Christina to find out why. It was going to be basically because they were trying to just steal her land, and she just wasn't going to have it. So the design change had to come up here, and now comes in up here. This is pretty much where the apple barn is. So the antique barn, many of you know the antique barn. So I thought, well, golly, that's going to be crazy. There's no traffic mitigation there at all. There's no pocket turn lane for this. There's nothing there, and the visibility from this building is going to really mess things up for people coming through here. So that was another of my concern. I also didn't like that I found out what the park was. It's a hillside. It's a very long hillside. 0.74 acres then, going into Nicene Mark State Park, a vertical hillside with houses up here. And part of the design changes is that we wanted to make the park smaller so they could have more room for parking. The other big design change was that the Board of Supervisors wanted to graciously give Barry Swenson Builder another 6 units of housing. The approved number of units in 2010 was 63. 63 new residential units, 15 commercial spaces, office spaces, 4 restaurants, and a big grocery store, New Leaf Market. This is where the New Leaf Market's going to be. And so this was getting drawn out a long time. Barry Swenson Builder was wanting more money. So the Board of Supervisors, as part of the design thing, approved 6 more residential units. And in order to do that, they couldn't really, it would make it too complicated if they added them on somewhere. So they got the approval to, as the design change, to make a bunch of really tiny units in here to squeeze in those extra 6. And when I asked Randall Adams, the planner, how come you're adding more here? There's already too much. He said, well, it's to help Barry Swenson Builder recover costs from a very prolonged development application process. Well, that makes a lot of sense. the basis of the design modifications when I finally saw them. And I wrote it all of my protests, don't approve this, we need to see more information, we need to see what this is all going to look like, we need more traffic studies, this is just not a good thing for this little space. Well, it was, and I said, no, you've given the developer extra time, you need to give the citizens more time to look at this. And I took a copy of that up to Zach Friend's office. Well, the next couple days later, I got a call from Randall Adams of Planning saying, okay, we'll extend the comment period, but I'm only going to change the website, and it's up to you to let people know that the comment period has been changed. They didn't even change the signs at the site. Wow. So I got on an email and did all that, and we asked for that approval to be extended, to be denied, and our comments were all accepted, and it was approved. The design changes were approved. Well, I appealed that, and I found it was going to cost $1,200 to appeal it. And I asked Zach Friend, I said, is there any way that you could reduce that or waive that fee? I'm just a little citizen here trying to fight big old Barry Swenson builder. He said, oh no, we've got to adhere to the process, adhere to the procedures.
Wasn't it Mr. Friend's public policy out of Georgetown, Agenda 21, to put in that $1,200 fee?
The $1,200 fee is the standard appeal fee. And so he said, no, we can't, you got to pay the fee. And I said, okay, I will. Now, somebody had left me a $500 anonymous gift at where I was working at the time. My employer couldn't tell me who it was and gave me a description. I don't know who it was, but they made it possible for me to afford, along with my new part-time job paycheck that I had then, to file that $1,200 fee, appeal fee. And I think they really didn't like it. They really didn't like it, not at all. And so I was told, okay, well, now it's going to go to the zoning administrator. And I kept asking, well, what's the process? Well, it's going to go to the zoning administrator. Okay. So then, the next day, after I filed the appeal, I got a call from Supervisor Friend's office saying that he was going to expedite it straight away to the Board of Supervisors. Now, he said in the hearing, we did this because the appellant has been asking for public hearings, public community meetings. Well, yes, I wanted that, but what I wanted was a public discussion about what they were planning to push through. So what happened is that, boom, it went on the agenda, the Board of Supervisors agenda for May 5th, in 3 weeks after I filed the appeal. Had it have gone the normal route, it would have first gone to the zoning administrator. I could have appealed that, and then it would have taken more time to go to the planning commission, and that would have taken time, and I would have appealed that, and then it would have ended up at the Board of Supervisors. So what he did was expedited the whole process, so it only took 3 weeks delay from the time of filing my appeal to what it would have been maybe 2 or 3 months. So this is what we have. And the appeal hearing was really awful because I kept asking what is the process, and I called my good friend Robin Levy. I said, Robin, what do I do here? She said, ask right away what is the process for citizens to change this development, and they have to tell you. So I kept asking that, and they didn't answer my question. And so the appeal hearing went that I got up, I had to get up and give my argument first, and then the developer got up and gave their response to mine, and then they had public comment, and there were a lot of people from the Aptos area that spoke against it. But there were a lot of people that Testorf had. He had all of his workers there. They were all wearing Testorf hoodies, and they all supported the development. And the Santa Cruz business community, business council got up and supported it, and the Aptos Chamber of Commerce got up and supported it. But the minds were made up already. And it goes back to what Debbie said. They really don't care. They come into that room and they've got their minds made up, and it does, I don't want to discourage you from going to these meetings and speaking, because that matters. Because it's not just them. Those meetings are televised, and there are people you would not believe who is watching and listening to that, and that matters. Eventually, that matters. So don't be discouraged by what I have experienced. So they approved, they denied my appeal. What I learned later is that there was a completely illegal process. What I learned in going to other Board of Supervisors meetings, that appeal hearing should have been structured completely differently, but because I didn't have legal counsel, I didn't know, and they knew I didn't know, and so I got bulldozed again. So, again, it led me on the next leg of the journey, and that was to research and really start digging what was going on, because people have accused me of really trying to just dig up dirt in a false manner against the county. But
it's not hard to find real dirt.
She is falsely dig up dirt, maybe I should say. But what I learned in that initial thing, going to the planning department and being and not seeing anything for the people to see when it was all supposed to be there, and the material not being even brought in until 2 days before the end of the comment period. The whole attitude of the planning department, the whole attitude of the Board of Supervisors, that's what has instilled in me a very strong sense of distrust. And the more information I've learned via my public records request acts, that distrust is well-founded. I want to move along now. Thank you for your patience. Oh, God. Yeah. So I started going to Board of Supervisor meetings, and I heard the planning department get up and talk about the code modernization. And what I heard alarmed me so much, I just couldn't fathom these kinds of changes to the process, and mostly having just come through an appeal process and having paid $1,200 for nothing. I couldn't believe it, and I also saw that very few people are able to go to those Board of Supervisor meetings when they're held at 9 a.m. on Tuesday mornings. And what I've seen is oftentimes the really interesting things that are critical for us to know about are put in a consent agenda with this long list of stuff. A lot of people don't read it. Or even if it is an agenda item, a formal agenda item, you never know when it's actually going to come up on the agenda for discussion. So unless you have the full day to wait around, you might not be able to stay and listen. And the other thing I realized, and you really got to know this, it's a very crafty thing. On the County Board of Supervisors agenda site, you can listen to the audio recording of the meetings after they've happened. What you will hear is what was said into the microphone when it was turned on. What Zap Friends said into the microphone when it was turned off is that Soquel Creek Water District would be at my appeal hearing to address my concerns about the relocation of the well. Well, they weren't there. And when I asked him about it later, he said, well, I never said that. He said, I listened to the recording. You go ahead, you listen. Well, the microphone was turned off. Now, I'm not very good with technology, but I do know that community television is there recording, and I haven't been able to technologically go check out community television for the May 5th, 2015 thing, or actually 3 weeks before that, it would have been in April, when he promised that SoCal Creek would be there. But I had a friend that was going to Board of Supervisor meetings and recording them on her own. And when you do things like that, you get a lot of criticism from people in government. Why are you doing this? It's already recorded. Well, she picked up on her little tape recording that he said that. Well, there you go. So I got really upset about the code modernization, and I wanted to bring that to my community, the Aptos community. So I rented the Aptos library, and I put up green signs, kind of like this, all around Aptos saying, come to this meeting because there's big changes in development, and you might not know what's going to happen. So that meeting room was filled to capacity and spilling out the door. And I was amazed. And so I wanted to help people feel comfortable, and I wanted to help us all get to know each other. Here we are a community, and so I had people go around and introduce themselves. And they wouldn't stop bringing up the Aptos Village project. They're so upset about that project. I should also back up a little bit and say that before the appeal hearing, there was a public meeting held at the Rio Sands Hotel that was called because I really was adamantly insisting that Zach Friend do that. I kept saying, people just don't know about this. You've got it. It's gone on so long. You've got to have a meeting. And he didn't want to do it, but he finally did. And initially scheduled it in the Community Foundation building that would hold 60 people. And I said, no, you're going to need a bigger place. You need the secret in someplace big. So they held it at the Rio Sands, and that building was near to popping with people. It was standing room only. And people had filled the halls, filled the stairways. There were people standing outside listening through open windows, and probably 100 people left because there was no place to park and they couldn't even get in the door. There was a lot of interest in the Aptos Village project. There were a lot of questions about what was going to happen. And it was a very controlled meeting. It was a very contentious meeting. And to me, pointed out that there needed to be more of those. Well, Zach Friend has refused to hold any more of those. He, in fact, refused to hold the appeal hearing in the evening so that more people could come. So the group that started meeting regularly at the Aptos Library, and then we moved to the Bayview Hotel, became known as the We Are Aptos, which is kind of a funny story. We decided we really needed to have a website, and who could do a website? Well, this young lady who had never been to a meeting before popped up and said, I'll do it. And I've got a name for you too. It's We Are Aptos. And we said, hey, that sounds great. And little did we know the acronym is WAG. Well, she set up the website, and then she just disappeared after I sent her all the emails for the people who had signed up. And then I found out that she was a great financial supporter of Zach Friend.
Oh my God!
So once again, I got both ears. But it's okay, because the website got up, and another really wonderful young lady took it over, and so it's not always very current, because she's got a very busy life, and she depends on me to send her stuff via email, and my internet is down a lot. But anyway, it is what it is, and it's better than it was before. So the We Are Aptos group said, we think people don't know what's going on out there. We're going to put out a survey. So out of our own money, we sent out surveys to over 2,600 residents of Aptos in the mountain areas of Trout Gulch, the whole area immediately around, rural as well as urban, that we felt were going to be affected by this development, just to see what they thought. And it was a very neutral, and Marilyn really takes case with that, but it was very neutral survey, just wanting to find out what people knew and what they thought, and if they wanted more information. We got back a 10% rate, which is really good because they had to fill it out, put a stamp on it, and mail it. We found out, so we got the results of the survey, and we found this out, and we presented this to the Board of Supervisors at the meeting, and also when they approved the final map later. This is kind of a breakdown, and I really want to thank a wonderful woman named Ophelia Garcia. This was her idea to do the survey, and she took it on, and she did such a great, thorough, impartial analysis that, and then she had us all check it over. And so what we found out is the knowledge, 23% didn't know much, about half felt like they were well informed, and some of them had gone to the developer's website. The opinion of the development, 24% said, it's a great plan. 22% said, well, we like the plan, but we got other kind of concerns. 36% said they didn't like the plan at all. The things that people liked about the plan is the grocery store, it's going to be a new leaf market. It'll have some restaurants. It'll just improve the atmosphere, get something going, clean it up. Concerns about the plan, look at that. 79% of people who like the plan have real concerns about the traffic. 23% are worried about the water. 26% say it's just too much, it's just too dense. 19% worried about the loss of atmosphere, a small town feel. 9% are worried about clogging up the roads, and the 4 schools and the 1,500 residents up those rural mountain roads won't be able to get emergency access or get out in the event of a wildfire evacuation. The Board of Supervisors never responded to us when we presented this to them. They've not to date done anything to respond to this. This is not working. There we go. Okay, well, isn't that beautiful? That's the plan. That's the beautiful cameo shot. And that is the signature of the Aptos Village project. Notice the 3-story structure. Notice the stores on the bottom, 2-story living above. Notice this cupola, which will be higher than the Bayview Hotel. That's not allowed, but that's what is approved. Notice there are no cars. Notice there are no cars parked. Notice there are no fire engines trying to get through. But the thing that many people like about this is that it's got this village green. That the developer is saying will give the community a central place to gather for like farmers markets, 4th of July parades, talks about Agenda 21. But I'll tell you what it is it's a very small area of artificial grass and a big area of open concrete. And, you know, that's the village green. And that's the village green. Let me see if I can get this. So I wanted to show you because traffic is a big concern there. We've got SoCal. This is a map. This is very new. This is something I got from my most recent public records request. These are the traffic improvements that the County Public Works has said is going to fix everything, including the 4,000 cars a day new that are going to come in and go to all these wonderful things. So the traffic counts, I will tell you, are old. They're from 2004. They were updated only the peak 2-hour afternoon numbers in 2006. And then in 2009, those peak 2-hour afternoon numbers were revisited again, but because it was during the recession, the numbers were lower. And I was told by the traffic engineer, Mr. Jack Sarikoff of Public Works, that they actually went back to the 2006 numbers. I did a traffic study of my own and sat there for a lot of time, and some of you helped me out here from the We Are Aptos group. Thank you so much. We used the same methods after discussing how to do it with the traffic engineer. We used the same methods that were used by TJKM, the traffic consultant paid by Barry Swenson Builder. And we did our studies at the same time of year, October, on the same days, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, that they had done, and for the same hours. And what we found was that the traffic counts for this intersection, this is Trout Gulch, this is SoCal, the traffic counts for this intersection now at peak are around 1,400 cars an hour. And what the traffic engineer said would be the peak at this intersection with the development was around 1,100 to 1,200. So it's already higher. But putting a traffic light here is going to fix everything. And putting another traffic light over here is going to fix everything. Never mind that there's another one down here across the bridge, and another one just a little ways up at Rancho Gilmore Shopping Center, and another one at State Park. The traffic engineer did say at Rio Sands that these traffic lights work only if they're at least 0.2 of a mile apart. This is not 0.2 of a mile. This is about 500 feet from here to this one. It's about 600 feet, and from the Spreckles one going down to the Rio Del Mar Beach, it's about 1,000 feet from that light up to Rancho Del Mar. So we don't have a lot of confidence that this is going to mitigate the traffic.
Plus it's a bottleneck on each side.
Yes, yes, and I'll show you that in a moment. So here's, for those of you who have been wondering what's going to happen when the county is putting in, you all are funding this, to put in a traffic light here. They're going to extend this kind of already happens on its own here, these 2 lanes coming from Trout Gulch. They're going to move the bus stop that is now up here. They're going to move it over here. And they're going to create sort of a pocket turn lane so the bus can get over. They're going to add a left turn lane here so you can go in here to Bay Federal Bank and Starbucks and all of that. And that is a very busy, that's a busy parking lot. That's a very busy parking lot. They're all worried about what's going to happen when this traffic light goes here and traffic backs up in here and people can't get in and out of their parking spaces, which they don't have enough parking anyway. And then this is already this way. It's kind of sketchy here where the bike lane is going to go, but this is supposed to have a bike lane and sidewalk put here, and that's how they're going to mitigate traffic at that intersection. Now, that's going to happen, they think, this summer. Over here, this is not going to happen for a while because they don't have the money. And they're banking on the money that the developer pays them to start building so that they can fund, they can have enough money, and I'm speaking of they being Department of Public Works, this is going to get funded then. But until then, part of the mitigations is that you won't be able to turn from Nicene Mark State Park and come this way. That will be not allowed. So what you'll have to do, once this connector road gets put through, and it's kind of hard to see on this map because it isn't even in this traffic improvement map, but the Aptos Village Way that I showed you earlier will come here. You'll have to come out of here, go up here, hope that somebody lets you out on Trout Gulch because there's no pocket turn lane. There's absolutely nothing being added here on Trout Gulch. So then you can come down here and you can wait in the light, and then you can go on the light. Oh, yes. Now, I want to also point out the Parade Street. That's going to connect this new one here to SoCal Drive. You will only be allowed to turn in coming this way from SoCal Drive and turn out going this way from Parade Street. These people at what used to be called the Britannia Arms, they're going to lose parking because the county is going to make a turn lane that will eventually service this entrance here. Now, all of these improvements, including the new railway crossing here that's being established, are being paid for by you and me. This is to serve the development. They're making the argument that, well, they needed these improvements anyway, so it's just a matter, it's just a matter of time, and we really need to make them. But this one is a very interesting story. Those of you who I want to make a long story short. The Bayview Hotel is here. They have their own private crossing here that serves them. And the county has gone to the Public Utilities Commission for permission to close their private entrance in order to get permission to open a new one that will serve this development. And county council worked for free. You and I paid for county council to do it. Department of Public Works did all the application. They hired an outside consultant for $71,000 to write the application so that it would get accepted. And Ellen Perry asked to have another consultant do a justification because in the initial plans they were saying there was going to be another light here, and people went nuts. So, but they had to have a light there because out of safety for the railroad. And so she paid she had you and I pay the consultant to get an official professional opinion that there did not need to be a traffic signal here.
Of course.
Let me move along. So here we are. This was, and Bruce, I want to thank you so much. Bruce came on Monday. This was just last Monday. Bruce came, and this is what, on a Monday, on a holiday, Soquel Drive looks like going down to the bridge.
That's all the way across the bridge to the light.
Yeah.
And all the way through Aptos.
All day.
It's pretty much that way all day. And so we've got a bridge bottlenecking on one side, a two-lane bridge. And there you go. There's that traffic light on Sparkles going down that they're assuring us they're going to coordinate all of them. So it'll just be a breeze going through Aptos Village. But here's this nice old bridge, built in 1928, and more than a few of us are worried about the integrity of that old bridge with all of the construction traffic that is proposed to go over it. There will be a tremendous amount of earth removal from this construction site if it's allowed to go forward. And there's the other end. This is the trestle. Here's Starbucks, Bay Federal. This is Soquel Drive. This is, right here is Trout Gulch. And look at, they're all backed up there too. And there's the trestle. You can kind of barely see it right there. It's an old trestle. Now, I should tell you that my neighbor, one of my neighbors is Sandy Leiden, local famous historian. He said this area was known as Los Dos Pasos Malos, the two bad passes, because you just couldn't get through. And he said nothing happened in this area, the Aptos Village, until the railroad came through. And then once the train came through, well, then it became a hub for the logging that went up into Nicene Mark State Park. For all the railroad, it was huge. There's a huge historic component to the Aptos Village that a lot of us are concerned about with this development, proposed development coming through. And there we are looking at the Bayview, and this is Trout Gulch intersection. And there's the bus. The bus is going to be coming over here pretty soon, changing into that. But they're going to put a traffic light at this intersection, and you can see it's all backed up. And there's some more traffic. And this is not an unusual thing. What happens is that the freeway backs up, so people take Soquel Drive. Now, There was never an environmental impact report done for this development, which is pretty astonishing, given the magnitude of it, the density of it, that it is between Los Dos Malos Pasos. That was never done. And as part of my public records request work, I found out why. And I found out why it always seemed like it was a done deal at all those meetings way back before it was approved. And even then we were being told there's nothing you could do, it's an entitled project. Barry Swenson Builder started meeting with county public staff behind closed doors beginning in 2003. Wow. And they made deals, and they made plans, and they developed the Aptos Village Plan, which they eventually brought to the public. Here you go, we said, people, what would you like to see? And they scribbled down notes, and, you know, I have not been able to find any notes taken from any of those meetings except one, of what the people wanted, what the people were concerned about. They had the plan, and it was a charade. Check off the box, we had public meetings, and they went ahead with what they wanted to do. Yeah. There was no environmental impact report done because Supervisor Peary and the planning department actively blocked it. There were many issues way back in those meetings that people had and continue to have today, and a big one is water. This is a slide that I got from attending a County Board of Supervisor meeting at which Soquel Creek Water District manager and a board, Mr. Rick Meyer, who passed away in December, came to present to the Board of Supervisors to impress upon them that the mid-county area in particular, but everybody in the Purísima Aquifer, which includes Santa Cruz, coming all the way down through parts of Corralitos, La Selva Beach, and it goes out into the sea. It is in serious trouble and has been since 1980, but nobody wanted to admit it. And those two men went and impressed upon the Board of Supervisors that they really don't have the water for these planning changes you're making and all this dense development. And very quickly, County Administrative Officer Susan Moriello said, we are not going to take any action on this today. This is only for information. I'm just reminding you, supervisors. And so this was the graph that they presented to the Board of Supervisors. You can see that it's been in overdraft since 1980. Seriously so. Now, this is deceptive. They are still in overdraft. But conservation measures, thanks to all of the good people who really are trying to make a difference and conserve water, helped it get down to the levels that at least it was approaching the safe yield pumping level, which is decreasing, projected to decrease. What Soquel Creek did, they did grant the will serve letters to Barry Swenson Builder for the Aptos Village project because they started a water demand offset program in 2003 so that if you were going to build, you had to do something to offset that projected demand, conserve water. And so it's kind of, as they said, it's like putting water in the bank. And so Barry Swenson Builder did that. He replaced a lot of the toilets at Cabrillo College and J Street Park, some other places. But they ran out of toilets to replace, and this was stretching on, and other people were replacing toilets too. And people were starting to ask the question, how many times can you replace a toilet and get credit for it? So Soquel Creek Water District, and I want to just put in a plug for that board. You know, they're the last vestige of elected representatives that are willing to listen to people, and they will answer your question when you get up to the podium and ask them one. Yes. They're the only ones that will. And they're good people, by and large. I don't agree with all of their opinions, but they're trying to do their best. And so I think they're doing their best. I think they could do a lot better. And I go to their meetings and I tell them so. Because they need to, after they granted Barry Swenson Builder all these water demand offset credits, and what they did was they said, okay, we're out of toilets, now you can just give us money. And so Barry Swenson Builder got to pay for the rest of his offsets at $18,000 an acre foot. Within weeks, that price went up to $55,000 per acre foot.
It was a giveaway.
And the Soquel Creek Water District declared a groundwater state of emergency, which should have gone countywide, but the county doesn't want to accept that responsibility. They don't want to stand up and do anything that's going to be responsible and maybe get them in trouble with lawsuits. And that is why Soquel Creek Water District doesn't want to declare a moratorium, because, and they've said this, we'll get sued. So they went to the county planning, to the county board of supervisors and said, you know, in essence, you've got to stop this crazy land use policy. We don't have the water. And what Rick Meyer said was priceless. And Rick Meyer passed away 5 days afterwards. He was that sick. And I helped wheel him out in a chair that I borrowed from the law library because he was so weak he couldn't make it to the door on his own. But he was so passionate and so determined to let those supervisors know how serious the problem is. And what he said was, at the end, when you make mistakes in land use, you get clogged roads, stores that are hard to get into, hard to park at. When we make mistakes with water policy, like we're maybe going to have to do here, we can lose the whole water supply of the entire area.
Right.
So what Soquel Creek has said is that in order to restore the health of the groundwater basin, what's happening is they're pumping out more than is going in. The Purisma aquifer is like layer cakes, and it goes out undersea. And so they're pumping out more up on the land, from up on the land, and the seawater is coming in. And the salt water will cause irreversible damage to the aquifer. So they've got to reduce pumping. Well, you would think that a moratorium would be a good thing to do, but they're not willing to do it. So what they would have to do is double the amount of conservation that people are doing now, double. And people are already, I hear it all the time, they just can't do anymore. Double conservation efforts and reduce the pumping that they do by 1,000 acre feet, maybe 1,500 acre feet for 20 years. It's very serious. And you and I know that. And we're having a hard time getting through to the people who are making our land use policy to reflect that concern. Now I want to walk you along, and I'll just say, if there had been an environmental impact report, the water would have been a key issue and probably would have stalled the development. An EIR addresses a lot of issues: water, traffic, public safety, parking, impacts on schools, the historic issue, and the biological issues, the impacts that this huge development, any development, will have. Now, I will tell you that the EIR and something called the planned unit development, this is a very sneaky thing they did here. I think it's sneaky. They approved it as something called a planned unit development, which means they draw a circle all around the area where they want to build, and they wipe it clean, and they don't have to follow any zoning code or county code issues. So it frees them up to have closer setbacks. In fact, you'll see that in a minute. One of the two-story buildings on Cathedral Drive, exactly opposite the post office, will have a 2-foot setback from the sidewalk. 2-foot setback. And they will be allowed to have a balcony that encroaches into the public right-of-way, the public easement. They will be allowed to have height exemptions, and all but 2 buildings within this development do require a height exemption, including that building with the cupola that will make it 6 feet taller than the Bayview Hotel. They will be able to have narrower streets with sharper curb returns so that they can fit all this in. But what about a fire engine coming in? This is 3-story buildings. It will require a ladder truck. Aptos, the Selva Fire Department has no ladder truck. So if there is a fire in a 3-story portion of any of these buildings, and they're assuring us that it won't happen because they're all going to be up to code and modern sprinklers and earthquakes never happen and all that stuff. So the nearest ladder truck will be from Central Fire District down by Dominican Hospital. If that one's busy, it's coming from Watsonville. If that one's busy, like in a big emergency when things are happening, there will be no ladder truck coming. If there were one coming, Mr. Roszell here, the retired firefighter, explained to me that a ladder truck has outriggers that have to go out. These narrow streets going through the Aptos Village Way, the parade, there will be parking allowed on both sides of those streets, and that is to enable the developer to meet their parking requirements. That's not a code. It's not allowed, but it's being allowed here. And the outriggers will not be able to be fully extended if they can at all. And if it happens that they find a place where there are no cars, the outriggers will go out, but there'll be no way for other emergency vehicles to come and go. So there are a lot of exceptions that have been granted in this because they did it as a planned unit development that lets the developer and the county come up with whatever they want to do to suit whatever it is they want to do. So here's the Bayview Hotel, the landmark, the gem of the area with this beautiful magnolia tree. I'm going to move along. This woman, Christina Locke, is really having a fight regarding her property rights, and also she's been really pushed on and intimidated. Here is the old, this is right next to the Bayview Hotel. This is the VFW firehouse. This was the first firehouse in Aptos. The Bayview Hotel is on the National Registry of Places to Go. National Registry in the country. This is what's called an NR, thank you, an NR, a National Registry Historic Place. It has a level 5, which is the lowest, but it's still significant. This property owner was able to get the county inspector to red tag it and say it was unstable and dilapidated and get a demolition permit so that he could just destroy it and build the 2-story building that he wants to put right on the property line next to the Bayview Hotel. And the county did that. And he's been given a demolition permit. And last week when I thought about this and went to the planner and said, how come they get to have a demolition permit for a building that is so dilapidated and unsafe, but Testor, one of the property owners, is there with his office for the last 2 years? And she said, are they in that building? That red tag was never cleared, she said. I'll get right on it. Okay. So you can kind of see why I'm not really confident we're going to get a lot of help from the county. Here's the Bayview Hotel again. And these beautiful mature redwood trees, which Barry Swenson Builder and Joe Appenrod is the owner here, want to cut down. Now this is a huge biological issue. Would have been something that in an EIR, again, probably would have shot the project down because this is a huge hawk nesting and roosting place. But this developer will be allowed to cut those down. As I said, this area has a lot of historical significance. This is a nice old photo of what the apple barn was. It kind of morphed, but you can see that it was really the center and historic area, and that continues to be true. There is a lot of rich and varied historical items. Now, one mitigation the developer has to have is an archaeologist on site observing digs. Do you see an archaeologist there? No. That guy's not an archaeologist.
I see about 50, yeah.
I have driven by the site numerous times. We have a group, we have in our office group, a lady that is employed by the state as an archaeologist. She is driven by, she is appalled. She is simply appalled that what is being allowed to be dug here with no oversight is appalling.
This is on President's Day too, and they are excavating like crazy.
Yes,
on
this
the
is a holiday. Also the
course.
holiday. Here's the back of the apple barn, the antique barn. And when I go talk with Wanda Williams at the county planning department about it, she said, well, you know, I'm not sure they have to have an archaeologist on site. I'll have to review that policy. So she did, and I asked her again. And she said, well, I looked into it, and Keith Henderson, the foreman for Barry Swenson Builder, has been trained to things that are of significant historical value, and he will close down the site if he sees anything. Oh. And I just said, you know, Wanda, you know he won't. Well, he's been trained. Okay. So this is walking around behind. This is on the entrance to Nising Mark State Park, Aptos Creek Road. Look at all these cars. Now, this is a mecca for runners and bicyclists to park here and go into the park and spend the day in the park, or maybe just meet with friends. The local running shoe store, they meet here, and they all go on group runs into the park. This is all going to go away. State Parks has no room to create a parking area to serve these people. And the argument is, well, they should be paying their fees. They shouldn't be pirating entry into the park. State Parks doesn't have the room for them, even if
So
they were.
Is that the park, the designated park?
Yeah, that's the park.
It's a 45-degree slope.
With the houses on top.
Oh, gosh.
I'm
sorry. Well, yeah, there's the park. Gosh, doesn't it look like active recreation just waiting to happen?
Yeah, all the hikers.
We met with Jeff Gaffney, the parks director, and he said they have no idea why that was approved. He thinks that it was because they had at the time a park, you see, parks got unfunded for a while, and Public Works was actually who was handling parks. And so we kind of think it might have happened then, but what he said was, for a while there was a guy that was managing the parks, and he just really felt like their budget couldn't accommodate any more parks. So he probably approved this because he knew they'd never have to do anything with it, and so it wouldn't be a drain on the budget. Well, I don't think that's it. Wanda Williams told us that this land was owned by one of the developers within the group. And I've researched that, and that is true. And Barry Swenson Builder told our group they paid $500,000 to the owner for this park parcel to satisfy the requirement for an active recreation area. In exchange for this lovely gift to the public, which the public will have to develop, Barry Swenson Builder's not going to make it a park. They're just going to give us this little piece of land. They got free drainage easement for all of the parking lot and roof storm water runoff from the entire development into Aptos Creek, free, going across county property. They also got to waive the in lieu county park fee to support Aptos Parks of $750 per bedroom in the development. They didn't have to pay that because they gave us this lovely park. Now, that's gonna take me back to the bike jumps. If I would have known about this, I would have kicked them in the shins and said, no, you won't. The bike jumps should have been the active recreation site. But you see, we didn't have a county supervisor that was willing to negotiate either. We don't have a county supervisor that is willing to negotiate on behalf of the people.
Becky Steinbruner for supervisor.
So here's another site, another shot of the park. And you can see here, this is a really bumpy road, but it's how a lot of people are getting out. This comes in off the end of Granite Way and Village Drive to connect people to Aptos Creek Road, and a lot of those residents in there use that. That's going to go away. So here we are coming in on that rutted, bumpy road, and you can kind of see the construction area. This is the park parcel here. This is a road that the developer just bulldozed in because they wanted to chain link this off, gate it off. People were driving by and looking at things and asking them questions like, where's the archaeologist? And one day I was there, Bruce told me, I have to tell this story. One day I was there saying, where's the archaeologist? And the man said, oh, I don't know, I think I might have met him for the first time this morning. And I said, you know, what are you finding in here? He said, well, the guy told me there's a 10-person burial ground somewhere in here. He's not sure where it is. I said, oh, yeah, well, you know, the Bayview Hotel was an infirmary when there was a bad cholera outbreak. Oh, there are some people buried back here. So when I asked for the fourth time with Wanda Williams, where is the archaeologist? I said, you know, Wanda, the man told me, the archaeologist told me that, told him that there's a burial ground there. We're going to have to tell those workers to stop talking with people. So here's the bulldozed road. You can see it's kind of dusty. There is a dust control mitigation that this developer is supposed to be handling. No.
No water.
They didn't have a permit to do this kind of grading. And does that look to you like that follows standard procedure for a winter grading permit, which they do have, and involves seeding and putting erosion control measures all around? No. But you know what the County Department of Public Works traffic engineer, Jack Rykoff, said when I asked him? He said, it's a construction site. It's okay. Now, this is an interesting little thing. This is going up Village Drive, which connects to Granite Way. Guess who owns this house? Kathy Prevasich and her husband, John. Kathy Prevasich is the director of Santa Cruz County Planning. At a September meeting in the evening, when Kathy Prevasich was there explaining these code modernization things at the Aptos Grange, one of the We Are Aptos group members got up and said, Ms. Prevasich, have you or anyone in your family financially benefited from the Aptos Village project? I can't hear you, she said. So Chris stood up and said it louder. Ms. Prevasich, have you or anyone in your family financially benefited from the Aptos Village project? I'm really having trouble hearing you. I'm sorry. Miss Prevasich, he repeated the question. In a whisper, she said, yes, my husband. She said, yes, my husband. They were paid, and we're still trying to find out the dollar amount. Their property line is here. They were paid what we have been told, what Christina Locke, Bayview Hotel owner, was told, $300,000 for a 5-foot wide piece of property for a storm sewer easement. $300,000. And that, when she got wind of that, and and had just been offered $20,000 for her big chunk of land so that Barry Swenson Builder could put the road through. She said no. So there is a bit of a conflict of interest here, I think.
It's called corruption.
So this is going down Village Way. The Prevasich property is here. And this tree is going to stay. All the other trees were taken away, despite what we were told at the Rio Sands by the project manager, Mary Gourlay from Barry Swinson. They're working very hard to save all the trees, especially by the post office. Well, that was the first thing they did, was take out all the trees, except those 2 lovely redwood trees and this tree. And that tree is going to stay only because this property owner right here is part of our We Are Aptos group, and she had to give them an easement across her property, and she insisted that was the one thing she wanted to stay, was that tree. And that's the only reason why that tree is going to stay. And thank you, Jennifer Wilson. They offered her a free roof, they offered her lots of money, and she refused it all. She said, no, I just want that tree. Here's the newly bulldozed road. This is the old road. This is Granite Way. This is the newly bulldozed road. This, for any of you who are history buffs, this is the house where Lucille Aldrich lived. Lucille Aldrich was the mover and shaker of Aptos. She was like the go-get-em lady in Aptos. And she held these Tuesday afternoon ladies' coffee sessions, and man, they decided how the community was going to be, and they did it for the benefit of the community. And in the 70s, they were having these wonderful big street fair things on the 4th of July, and they would close SoCal Drive and have picnics and sack races, and the whole community came out and they went back and forth across the railroad tracks. Well, Granite Rock said, we're going to build a cement factory right there. And they said, we don't think so. And then the railroad said, well, we're going to bring a train through. You can't have your picnic on both sides of the road because you can't cross the railroad tracks. So what they did was they, on the 4th of July, when the train was coming up, they laid on the tracks. Those women laid on the tracks. And I want to encourage you, one of our fundraising ideas for this is to have a tea at Bayview Hotel and invite the last remaining member of that Tuesday. Well, she was the last remaining one that laid down on the track. Her name is Ann Isaacs, and she's a kick in the pants. We've met with her, some of us, and she's just a hoot. And so we want to bring her to the Bayview Hotel and have some tea and tell stories and build some community in Aptos. So that's a fundraiser idea, and if you want to help with that, there's a sign-up sheet. And there's the dust control measures, fully enforced. I think so that was Lucille Aldrich's house right there. And that's what I think is so ironic here. It's just kind of sickening, really. That she has, from that house is now rented by a woman and her son, and her son was one of the premier bike jumpers in this area. He was the one that was the mover and shaker on taking that petition around the day before the bulldozers. He has suffered depression. He has suffered health effects. He can't live there anymore because it's just too painful. And that is Lucille Aldrich's house. And there they are. I'm sure, as the man told me, the archaeologist is around in the back there somewhere. What they're doing right now, and unfortunately they are excavating, and they're getting ready to build the pad for moving the apple barn. They're going to move that over to the center and rotate it, and that's going to be the new roof. And Bruce took a picture of this. This is on the tailgate. It's Forever, the Aptos post office jumps. This was on the tailgate of Aaron, the man who lives on Granite Way, that talked me out of saving the jumps. There's another construction shot. You can see these beautiful redwood trees in the Bayview Hotel. This is Granite Way coming into Cathedral Drive. The Aptos post office is over on this other side. Cathedral Drive, I live up Cathedral Drive. Cathedral Drive goes about 1.5 miles to Monitoyan Camp, which is a very busy outdoor ed school and a very busy camp owned by the Methodist Church. And then 2 miles beyond that goes Redwood Drive. There's one way in and one way out, and there are about 350 homes up beyond this point. There are no traffic mitigations here planned at all. When I pointed to the visibility problem here for people coming out of Granite Way, which the number is going to increase substantially because there'll be all the existing people that won't be able to go out the other way. They're all going to have to come here, as well as the 6 3,000 square foot townhome residence that's kind of across the way from Prevasage House, as well as the residents of the 12 townhomes along Granite Way. They all have to come out this way. And right on this other side, directly opposite this, is the exit of the Aptos post office. And if you've ever been in this area, you know it's really busy. This is the only post office in Aptos, and a lot of people go there. It's very, very busy. And it's also just very busy in terms of residents. There are a lot of people that live up here, and the builder said there are not many people that live up that road. So they don't really have to worry about it. And there are no traffic mitigations here at all. When I asked in my appeal for the design modifications to please address this visibility issue, it was not addressed at all. It was just denied. Here is looking back from Granite Way, the other way down Cathedral Drive. And interestingly enough, right after the bike jumps were bulldozed, this chain link fence went up, but it extended out to about here, into the road. And I filed a complaint with county code compliance that it was obstructing the roadway, it was a safety hazard, and they did nothing. This got moved in early December when they were granted their winter grading permit because they had to put this straw wattling around. But the county did nothing regarding the safety hazard of Barry Swenson Builders barricades. And there we are again. This is where there's going to be 2-story townhomes right along here. They're going to put a sidewalk here. 2 feet away will be the townhome. A 2 foot setback. 2 foot setback. Here's the intersection of Cathedral on Trout Gulch. This is the well site, the new well site for Soquel Creek. And, you know, they keep insisting that this is not being drilled to support the Aptos Village project, but I really think it is. And they're also building a very large storage tank just up the road on Quail Run Road that in Bill Parkin, the land use attorney who won the Castle House agreement, said that tank is being built to support the Aptos Village project development and encourage growth. And I will present to you that this well is also for that purpose. They say that they have to move their wells inland because the wells near the sea are experiencing this saltwater intrusion. They have a well over on the entrance to Nicene Mark State Park, at the entrance to the county park. This is not moving it inland. This is not moving it inland from that well. And in fact, because they have moved it to this site, they should have a whole new list of environmental mitigations in terms of stream monitoring. Their other site was close to Aptos Creek, and they had all kinds of mitigations in place to do there. But now that it's here and is more apt to affect Valencia and Trout Gulch Creek, which are much more fragile and lower stream flows, they would not answer my questions. The general manager and the engineer have refused to answer my questions. They said, send them again. Here's an issue that's going to affect the Bayview Hotel and why she's fighting it. This is her service access. She has been coming in through here, and that's going to be blocked off. So she's going to have to initiate her own service access. So we'll have the parade, the Aptos Village Way coming out here, and we'll have the service access. And there are no traffic mitigations at all. This is Trout Gulch, no pocket turn lanes, no changes at all on Trout Gulch, other than the traffic light at SoCal. Now, the issue of affordable housing comes up a lot, and our Aptos group have been told by County Supervisor Friend at Board of Supervisors meetings that we're just a bunch of NIMBYs that don't want affordable housing built in our neighborhood. Well, you know what, there really isn't, that isn't true, first of all. I mean, we're all struggling to live here, and we support affordable places for people to live. What we don't support is the density in an area that cannot support the traffic or the water or the emergency restrictions that this development we feel will bring. The affordable housing issue has always been an enigma here, and we've never gotten clear answers, but I was finally able to get a copy of the agreement, which was made the day before the final map was submitted to the County Board of Supervisors for approval. So all along we've been told that if they had to build affordable housing, there would be 12 units. And because they were giving an extra, that number was, because they were giving an extra 0.4 unit based on 63 houses, Measure J says you have to dedicate 15% of what you build to affordable housing. So that worked out to 11.6 for 63 homes. And because Barry Swenson Builder was willing to bump it up to 12, they gave him a lot of exceptions. They can make them smaller. They can cluster them. They can rent them at market rate for 5 to 7 years. They can do a lot of things and still call it affordable housing. So the agreement that I got shows that there are 10 affordable units, not 12. It's been reduced. And this was after Zach Friend insisted that we were all, when we went up and testified in the Board of Supervisors, we're just against affordable housing. That was when we were talking about the housing outlook. So here are some. 1 unit, second floor, 1 unit, third floor. Let me explain that what happened in December, the Board of Supervisors approved the final map. And remember I told you they called this a planned unit development, a PUD, and did whatever they wanted to. And they had the development sort of in phases. So, and they approved what was called a tentative map, kind of the general idea of what was going to happen. And it had all the buildings in there. And then in December, the board had to approve the final map. And I'll show you in a little bit about that discrepancy and talk with you a little bit. But here is, these are the only affordable units that are going to be built. And this one, for the phase 1 of the construction, 5 units. And then this is going to be later, who knows when, for affordable housing. This is parking. And that's always something that people are interested in. And at all of these public meetings, by the way, the Board of Supervisors, Zach Friend said there were over 20 public meetings held to develop this plan. And that's not true. That's not true. I got the list. That was one of the things that I asked for in my appeal hearing. I want a list of those meetings. And I wasn't given them. But I happened to go to Wanda Williams, the Assistant Planning Director, for another issue which had to do with fire safety and emergency vehicle and entrance into the Granite Way, which is going to be bottlenecked. And I said, Wanda, did you ever give me a list? You know, how many public meetings were there? She said, oh, I was supposed to give you that. So she gave me this paper, and I looked at them, and what were included as public meetings were Aptos Chamber of Commerce breakfasts. Constituent hours. And to be fair, some, like homeowners meetings and things, but when I think of public meetings, I think of, okay, here we've got the Seacliff Inn, this is a public meeting, anybody can come, everybody knows about it. You don't have to pay money to come. There were 5 of those. There were 5 of those.
Can I give you the connection between Zach Friend and the planning department? It's pretty short, but it's awfully interesting.
Go ahead.
Okay, go, yeah. He's going to give us some information about Zach Friend and planning.
Zach Friend was hired by the Santa Cruz City Police Department to be their spokesman. There was a confrontation between Tom Burns, the head of the planning department, and a whistleblower that used to work for the planning department. The city of Santa Cruz actually has jurisdiction inside the county building, and there was an altercation in one of the hallways between Tom Burns and the whistleblower. And Zach Friend came out as spokesman of the police department saying after reviewing the tapes that Tom Burns was innocent. The Mid-County Post came out and said there are no cameras. Zach Friend is a liar. Later on, Previch and Dan Halfley from Save Our Shores came in with a 60-page policy reorientation for the planning department. The Mid-County Post called the person that works for ICLEI, supported by the World Bank and the UN, and the Board of Supervisors adopted that plan. It's not local. Everything is coming in from outside, and we're seeing the results of this. Thank you so much for what you do.
Thank you. That explains a lot. This is the, all along we've been told that when we asked the developer, where are all those Nicing Marks Park users going to park? They say they can park anywhere in the development. Where are the bus riders going to park? Because a lot of the parking on Soquel Drive is going to go away. They can park anywhere in the development. Where are the train passengers for the railroad that everybody's talking about going to park? They can park anywhere in the Aptos Village development. Well, through a public records request, I was able to get the CC&Rs for the commercial common use development area, and here's a map of the parking. Notice 90-minute parking for this very large area near the shopping center. Now, as I said, the cars are going to be allowed to park on Parade Street, but within the common use areas, the owners of the stores and the residents have full control of who is able to use those parking areas and for how long, and for the benefit of their own property. So if all you have to do is go across the way and see at Starbucks, there are signs saying parking here for Starbucks only, 30-minute limit. Parking here for Bay Federal Bank, 30-minute limit. We think it's going to be just like that. And we tried our best to get the county planning department and Supervisor Zach Friend to make sure there was language written into the CC&Rs and the common use agreements that the public would have free and unlimited parking forever in the development as was promised. But it's not there. This is getting into now the lawsuit that the We Are Aptos people, our group, is launching by force. And it goes back to what Debbie said earlier. The county doesn't care. They're going to do what they want to do, and unless somebody sues them, it's going to go forward, and that is true. That's why there's no EIR. Zach Friend told me so. There was no EIR, he said, because nobody sued us to make us do it. I said, what? I said, it's a short window. It was only like a 90-day window. He said, yeah, but you had 2 years to sue us, and nobody sued us to make us do an EIR. Wow. I have seen, attending Board of Supervisor meeting, I have seen things that the planning department has approved that are illegal. And they move forward until a group of citizens gets upset about what they see. First of all, if they find out. And second of all, they get upset and they appeal it. They pay the appeal, the $1,200 appeal, and they hire an attorney. And they end up having to sue. And then it gets upheld for that the planning department must uphold the law. I've seen that many times in going to Board of Supervisor meetings. So what we have is, this is part of the final map that the Board of Supervisors approved in December 8, 2015. The final map must be substantially the same as what the board approved in the tentative map in 2010. It is not. One of the things, and this was something that I found just that day, our attorney, Bill Parkin, we've had to hire an attorney. He presented a brief to the County Board of Supervisors the night before. He couldn't do it any earlier because they didn't have the map up on the website for anyone to see. And in fact, when I went to the county building, I had a very difficult time getting it. But I found this, and this is Aptos Creek Road. This is an easement that the state gave the county with the stipulation that they may retain and maintain it. And yet this little sliver here, it's not big, but it's still land. The county in the final map is abandoning it to give it to the developer for a parking lot. This is the final map. And the lawsuit that Bill Parkin and the document addressed 3 issues. I stood up and I gave the text of the Senate bill that had that language in it about abandoning it, and the Board of Supervisors didn't even ask County Council, they didn't even mention it. The lawsuit and the brief, and there are copies of this in the back, please take one with you. Bill Parkin is a pretty sharp guy when it comes to land use, and he saw that there's a remainder lot here and a remainder lot here. There are no buildings at all. By law, a developer is allowed to have 1 remainder lot, not 2. What a remainder lot allows a developer to do is to come in at any time in the future and pretty much build whatever they want to build, not have to go through public process, not have to get formal approval. They only have to get a rubber stamp of approval from the planning department as a certificate of compliance. So who knows what could go in here? That's point number 1. Point number 2 is, look, remember that hillside? There's no notation that it's the future county park. That was an issue that in my Freedom of Information Act, Public Record Request Act, Ellen Perry actually wrote in one of her notes from a meeting that she was concerned about the county, the people losing the park parcel. I don't know why. But there it is. It's not noted. And the third issue, which Bill Parkin thinks is actually our strongest argument, is here. There's no building here. Remember, this is the Bayview Hotel. And here's the 2-story building that they want to put right on the property line. There's no building there now. There's no building there that was there earlier. And it's still noted on the tentative map as phase 1, part of the phase 1 of the development. But in the front of those 2 buildings on the tentative map, it was noted as common use area, which mandates that it must be made into a parking lot. That's gone. So what that could allow a developer like Joe Abendrod and Peter Testrock to do is build a bigger building that would obstruct the view of the Bayview Hotel and eclipse it. Now, the county has said that they can't plant trees over 8 feet tall right here to obstruct the view, and yet they're going to allow them to have a 12-foot tall monument sign there. I don't understand. So those are the points of the lawsuit. We had to pay Bill Parkin to develop that brief. It was our only fight that we had at the time. I will tell you, we've got a couple other really hopeful things cooking that I don't want to talk with you about right now. But for now, our best shot is to follow through on this illegal final map that the County Board of Supervisors approved on December 8th. We have until March 7th to file. Bill Parkin says we need to file by next week, 2 weeks out at the latest, because he's expecting a lot of pushback from the county. We are in debt $3,000 to pay him for his work to create that brief. He won't file the lawsuit until we pay him our debt. So if you or anybody you know has any spare change and might be sympathetic, anybody you know that knows somebody that might want to try and help out a community retain its character, retain its sense of having a community, then please take one of those in the back and pass it out. On the We Are Aptos website, there is a PayPal button. There's also a GoFundMe. Please, if you do social media, please feel free to spread it out. And this is where I'd like to leave you. This happened magically for Bruce and me, and I've got to think that it's the plea by the animals. This is one of those hawks that roost in that redwood tree next to Baby Hotel. To work together as a community, to do our best to save places like this for the animals, to save places like the bike jumps for our kids and the community, and to take our county to task and make them accountable to the people. I have several petitions in the back. One I really would love to have you sign is one to insist that the County Board of Supervisors change all Board of Supervisor, zoning administrator, and planning commission meetings to the evenings when people who work and commute can go to. Thank you. And I just want to tie it in again with what Debbie said. This happened because the people of Aptos weren't paying attention. It happened also because it wasn't really public. This will happen in your neighborhood too. If these zoning code changes and the housing element come through. So if I can do anything to wake up you, and if you can go home and talk with your neighbors and wake them up, we've really got to be proactive. We've got to work together. And I think we can do it, but it's going to be a lot of work. Thank you very much.